A 17-year-old boy goes to school one morning and never comes back home. The next day, his body is found rolled up inside a gym mat, upside down, in the school gym. Authorities call it a freak accident. Case closed. But here's where things get strange. There were shoes placed neatly on top of his body, blood found on a nearby wall that didn't belong to him, and multiple surveillance footage gaps that conveniently miss key moments. And to top it off, there are rumors of a cover-up, possibly involving the FBI. Sounds like a movie plot, right? Except it's not. This is a real case, one that's still full of questions and theories that just don't add up. Welcome to Slice of Darkness. This is your host, Alyssa, and today we're diving into the Kendrick Johnson case. Kendrick Johnson was just 17 years old, a quiet but athletic kid from Valdosta, Georgia. His family described him as the kind of person who brought life into their home, always joking around, always full of energy. He played football and had big dreams of going to college for it. He was just a normal teenager, thinking about his future, his friends, and his next game. But on January 10th, 2013, everything changed. That night, Kendrick was supposed to be at a sports event at school and then head home, just like any other day. But by 10 p.m., his mother, Jackie, started getting that uneasy feeling, that mother's intuition that something wasn't right. He wasn't home yet. At first, she tried to reason with herself. Maybe he was just running late, maybe he was with friends. But as the hours passed, that quiet worry turned into full-blown panic. By midnight, she was in her car, driving to the school, circling the area, looking for any sign of him. Was he walking home? Hanging out somewhere? She didn't know, but what she did know was that he should have been home by now. And when she couldn't find him, she called the police and reported him missing. The next morning, January 11th, Jackie went straight to the school. She and the school staff put up missing person flyers, hoping someone had seen Kendrick. But then, at around 10:30 a.m., everything came to a horrifying stop. A group of students were in the gym when they noticed something odd, socks sticking out from one of the rolled-up wrestling mats. At first, they thought it was a prank, but as they got closer, that uneasy feeling crept in. Something was wrong. They pulled the mat down, not realizing they were disturbing a potential crime scene. And that's when the smell hit them: vomit, blood, and something worse. The unmistakable scent of decomposition. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a joke. There was a body inside the mat. Panic spread through the school. The administration immediately put the building on lockdown, and the police were called. Now, imagine being Kendrick's mother in that moment. She was already at the school, desperately looking for her son, and then she hears that a body has been found in the gym. And not just anywhere, in a rolled-up wrestling mat. I can't even begin to imagine the fear, the shock, the devastation. Let's talk about how Kendrick was found, because this is where things start to feel off. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be curious about the crime scene photos. They're out there, and they're disturbing, especially the post-autopsy ones, which are even worse than when he was first found. But out of respect, I'm not going to show them here. Kendrick was discovered upside down inside a rolled-up wrestling mat that was stored vertically in the gym. A lot of students actually used these mats to stash their belongings because they didn't all have lockers, so it wasn't unusual for shoes and other items to be inside them. His arms were positioned behind him, his feet were at the top, and nearby, police found 2 pairs of shoes and a school book. One of his shoes was inside the mat near his legs, another was on the outside, and one was underneath his head. Now this is where the questions start piling up. The school's surveillance footage showed Kendrick entering the gym alone at around 1 p.m. He was later marked absent from his next class, which suggests this was the last known sighting of him. And then, nothing. The Lowndes County Sheriff's Department did an autopsy through the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and they came to a conclusion fairly quickly: positional asphyxia. They claimed Kendrick had suffocated after accidentally falling into the mat while reaching for his shoe. But here's the thing. When you look at the details, this explanation doesn't make a whole lot of sense. First, the mat's opening was actually narrower than Kendrick's shoulders, so if he had somehow slipped inside headfirst, how would that happen? How did he fit? And then there's the position of his arms. If he had been reaching for a shoe, wouldn't at least one of his arms be extended in front of him? Instead, they were both positioned behind him. That's not a natural way to fall. And then there's his face. Because Kendrick had been upside down for nearly 21 hours, all the blood in his body had pooled toward his head, causing severe swelling and discoloration. His face didn't look like someone who had just suffocated. But then again, bodies can look strange depending on how they're positioned after death. Still, his parents weren't buying it. And honestly, I don't blame them. This whole situation is very shady. So they demanded a second autopsy. As the story gained more attention, it became a full-blown controversy. Reverend Floyd Rose from the Valdosta Southern Christian Leadership Conference got involved, offering to help the family push for answers. They felt like their concerns were being brushed off, and they wanted justice, or at least a thorough investigation. In April 2013, Kendrick's family organized a protest. They held hands and blocked the entrance to the Lowndes County Courthouse. This led to their arrest for civil disobedience. And here's where you see just how much support they had. Reverend Rose literally put up his own home as collateral to bail Kendrick's mother out of jail. That's how strongly he believed they were being ignored. But the real shock? The results of the second autopsy. Now, this is where the case gets even messier. Dr. William Anderson, the independent pathologist hired by the Johnson family, found something shocking. Kendrick's body showed signs of blunt force trauma to the right side of his neck and jaw. This was completely different from the official cause of death, which was listed as positional asphyxia. And then there were the organs, or rather, the lack of them. When Kendrick's body was exhumed, his parents were horrified to find that his internal organs were missing and had been replaced with crumpled-up newspaper. The funeral home, Harrington Funeral Home, claimed they never received the organs in the first place. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which conducted the initial autopsy, said the organs had been discarded because they had liquefied due to decomposition. But this didn't sit right with the Johnsons or the public. Think about it. How do you just lose an entire set of organs? And if the funeral home was telling the truth, who discarded them? At this point, the Johnsons were convinced Kendrick had been murdered and that there was a full-blown cover-up happening. They started pushing harder, demanding that the case be reopened. Amid all the confusion and the gaps in the investigation, two names kept surfacing: Brandon and Brian Bell. Both of them went to the same school as Kendrick, and soon enough, they were at the center of swirling rumors. Some students and online forums started suggesting that there had been bad blood between Kendrick and one of the Bell brothers in the past, allegedly a fight or some kind of tension. Nothing officially confirmed, but you know how high school gossip works. Once a story catches on, it spreads like wildfire. And people started wondering, could this have been personal? Could something have gone down between them that day in the gym? Brandon and Brian Bell became the center of attention in the case, and their father, Rick Bell, being an FBI agent, only added more fuel to the fire. People started speculating that the FBI was involved in covering up Kendrick's death to protect the Bell family. But before we get too deep into the theories, let's look at why people suspected them in the first place. According to the Johnson family, Kendrick and Brandon had gotten into a fight on the school bus a year before his death. Some people said this fight was over a girl, while others claimed it was because of ongoing bullying. But the official record shows that after that altercation, the two weren't exactly best friends, but they weren't constantly fighting either. So, if there was bad blood, was it enough to lead to murder? Here's where things get sketchy. When the Johnson family's attorneys looked at the school's surveillance footage, they noticed something odd. Kendrick was seen entering the gym, but then there were gaps in the footage. And not just a few seconds, hours were missing from the tapes. Now, the school and law enforcement claimed the missing footage was due to the camera systems being motion activated, and that Kendrick had simply walked into a blind spot. But the Johnson family wasn't buying it. They felt like key moments had been erased, either to hide something or to protect someone. By 2015, the FBI was investigating, but not in the way people hoped. Instead of looking into Kendrick's death, they were investigating his parents for possible defamation and harassment against the Bell family. But here's the thing. Despite all the rumors and theories, Brandon and Brian Bell were never officially charged or named as suspects. The FBI even went as far as to issue statements saying they had no involvement in the case, and the Bell family maintained their innocence. Then, in 2016, a major blow hit the Johnson family's case. The U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia announced that there wasn't enough evidence to support federal charges. The case was closed once again. But Kendrick's parents? They weren't backing down. They filed multiple lawsuits, including a $100 million civil suit against 38 people, including local law enforcement, school officials, and the Bell family, accusing them of conspiring to cover up Kendrick's murder. However, this lawsuit was eventually dropped after they were ordered to pay attorney fees. Years passed, but the case never truly faded from the public's mind. In 2021, the case was reopened once again after new evidence was allegedly brought forward. But after reviewing over 17 boxes of documents, Sheriff Ashley Paul concluded that Kendrick's death was an accident, once again ruling out foul play. Now here's the question. Was Kendrick Johnson murdered, or was this truly a tragic accident? The people who believe the official story argue that Kendrick simply fell into the mat while trying to grab his shoe, got stuck, and suffocated. But the ones who don't buy it point to the missing footage, the blunt force trauma, the missing organs, and the alleged tensions at school. It's one of those cases where the truth feels just out of reach. And unless someone comes forward with undeniable proof, we may never know for sure what really happened to Kendrick Johnson. In 2014, Brandon and Brian Bell, the two boys who have been at the center of these accusations, have always said Kendrick was their friend. They claim they had nothing to do with his death. But Ebony magazine published a series of articles that basically pointed the finger at them without actually naming them. The descriptions, though? Way too specific to ignore. Anyone reading it could tell who they were talking about. And once that happened, things started spiraling out of control. In August 2014, the Bell family filed a $5 million lawsuit against the magazine. Their argument? That because of these articles, and because Kendrick's mom had spoken out, saying her son had been harassed by these boys, Brandon and Brian were now being harassed themselves. They said the articles led to bullying, threats, and serious damage to their reputations. But here's the confusing part. Neither of the Bell brothers cooperated with the investigation. At all. They didn't want to answer questions, they didn't provide statements, nothing. Now maybe that's because their dad was an FBI agent and he advised them to stay quiet. Or maybe they were just afraid of getting tangled up in something bigger. Either way, their complete refusal to cooperate, super suspicious. And it did have consequences. Brandon Bell had scored a football scholarship to Florida State University, but guess what? A year later, that scholarship was revoked. The school didn't want the backlash of handing a scholarship to someone who might be involved in a murder case. So, what's the truth? Were they involved, or were they just easy targets in a case that had no clear answers? Because regardless of what really happened, their lives were changed forever. And this case? Oh, it has been picked apart by the internet, blogs, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube. Every corner of the internet has had something to say. And honestly, it should be scrutinized, because the truth matters. The Bell brothers have always insisted they're innocent. But Kendrick's parents? They are convinced their son was murdered. Okay, so let's talk about these shoes for a second. The ones that were found on top of Kendrick inside the mat. I mean, how? How would he have put them there himself if he was already inside? That just doesn't make sense. Someone had to have placed them there after the fact. And here's something even weirder. There was dried blood on a nearby wall, right where Kendrick's body was found. But get this. The police dismissed it because they said it wasn't Kendrick's blood, so it wasn't relevant to the scene. Excuse me, what? How do you just ignore blood? It's literally like a fingerprint. It can tell you exactly who it belongs to. Wouldn't you at least want to figure out whose blood it was? How do you just brush that off? It's details like this that make people side-eye the entire investigation, like, what were they even doing? But here's something even more suspicious. The police found Kendrick's body 6 hours before they even called the coroner. 6 hours. Why the delay? What were they doing in all that time? And then we have the surveillance footage. Oh, this is where things get really messy. CNN brought in a forensic video expert, Grant Fredericks, to analyze the security footage from the school. And what he found caused huge suspicions. First of all, the footage isn't even original. It's been altered. The image quality is degraded, and files are missing huge chunks of time. Like, whole hours are just gone. And there's this massive gap right around the time Kendrick would have entered the gym. 4 different cameras, all with missing footage from the same time window. How convenient, right? Then, after Kendrick enters the gym, there's nothing. No footage of him climbing into the mat, no footage of him struggling, nothing. And even more suspicious? There's no video of the moment his body was found. The next time we see Kendrick on camera, he's being wheeled out in a body bag the next day. Now, in 2015, Reverend Floyd Rose, who was really involved in pushing for justice, actually changed his stance and said he no longer believed Kendrick was murdered. And that really shook a lot of people. At the end of the day, what we do know is that Kendrick's life was cut short. He had dreams. He wanted to play college football, maybe get married one day, have a family. And now, all of that is gone. Whether it was an accident, foul play, or something in between, it's just heartbreaking. And I do feel for everyone involved. If the Bell brothers really had nothing to do with it, then it sucks that they've lived under this cloud of suspicion for so long. But most of all, I feel for Kendrick and his family. And guess what? Even years later, this case isn't over. Just recently, on June 20th, 2018, Kendrick's mother announced that they were having his body exhumed for a 3rd autopsy. A 3rd one. That means they're still looking for answers, still not satisfied with what they've been told. And honestly, I get it. If this were your child, wouldn't you do everything in your power to find out the truth? All right, now let's talk about the psychology behind this case, because whether this was an accident, a prank gone horribly wrong, or something more sinister, human behavior plays a massive role in how things unfolded. If this was foul play, then we're looking at a case where someone or multiple people made a decision that led to Kendrick's death. Now, if it was intentional, that's a whole different level of psychology. That would mean we're dealing with someone capable of extreme violence, possibly fueled by anger, jealousy, or even a long-standing grudge. Some theories have pointed to bullying or a previous altercation as a motive, and if that's true, we'd be looking at something like reactive aggression, where someone acts impulsively out of rage. But what if it was a prank gone wrong? That would be more along the lines of reckless endangerment. The kind of situation where someone thought they were being funny, didn't realize the danger, and then panicked when things took a deadly turn. That's when fear-based decision-making kicks in. Instead of calling for help, they might have chosen to cover it up out of self-preservation, because once you cross a certain line, the brain shifts into survival mode. Fear of consequences, fear of losing everything, fear of getting caught, those things can push people to make horrible, selfish choices. Then there's the whole issue of how this case was handled. The missing surveillance footage, the blood on the wall that was never tested, that's where you start seeing signs of institutional psychology at play. Sometimes, when law enforcement makes an early call on a case, whether it's intentional or just incompetence, they double down instead of admitting they might be wrong. It's called confirmation bias, where people only look at evidence that supports their original belief and ignore anything that contradicts it. At the end of the day, whether this was an accident or something more, the psychology behind it is what makes it so disturbing. Because somebody knows what really happened that day. And whether it was a tragic mistake, a crime of passion, or something more calculated, the way this case was handled has only fueled more questions than answers. And that brings us to the end of today's case. If you have any information or thoughtful insights about this case, please let us know respectfully in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on future cases. And until next time, when we explore another bone-chilling case right here on Slice of Darkness. Stay vigilant, stay safe,